Joining me now is Phoebe Plummer, who is from Just Stop Oil. Phoebe, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. As I say, I want to hear both sides of the story. Am I right in thinking you might have been involved in one of the spraying of the paintings in a gallery, or have I got that wrong?
Hi, Trisha. Thank you so much for having me on. As you say, I'm Phoebe. I'm 21 and I'm a student in London and a supporter of Just Stop Oil. You might recognise me as one of the people who threw soup on Van Gogh's sunflowers. And I did this in support of Just Stop Oil, demanding that the government immediately halts all new licensing for oil, gas, and coal, because apparently we're going back to the dark ages in our energy policies.
All right. Now, look, can I just take you back to this? I'm going on these headlines here, and I'm just taking the facts and figures. I'm not going to take what else they said. But some of the things that the police are saying is, if it's an organised march, if it's not throwing paint on paintings or soup or what have you, if it's an organised march, that they can deal with. So why not talk to the police before you obviously you're not going to talk to them before you throw soup on a painting. You'll have to explain to me how that's relevant to Just Stop Oil. Actually, let's deal with that. For people who say, I don't get it. How does throwing soup on a painting alert us to climate change or what the government should or shouldn't do with oil and gas and coal?
Well, only weeks before Anna and I threw soup on the painting, 33 million people were displaced by the floods in Pakistan. And yet it took two young people throwing soup on a painting to get more people talking about the climate crisis, the millions of lives that have been destroyed by climate disaster.
Yeah, but wouldn't it be better to have something like in Hyde Park where you talk about these things? Because and I'm not unsympathetic to what you're saying. That's not, and I'm sure a lot of people aren't. But wouldn't it be better to actually, and the press ain't going to do it well, for you to be in somewhere like Hyde Park and actually discuss and talk about things, have people maybe from those places talk about being displaced and what it means and show people pictures? Wouldn't that be better than throwing soup on a painting?
Well, wouldn't it be better if the government listened to their own experts? I don't think that they should listen to a 21-year-old's opinion on how we avert climate catastrophe. But the United Nations have said we can have no new oil and gas. The International Energy Agency have said no new oil and gas. The IPCC report says it. The most comprehensive global report on the climate crisis, they all say no new oil and gas. And yet the government still isn't listening. It's been left to ordinary people like me to sound the alarm bells until they can refuse to listen no more.
But Phoebe, isn't people power where it's at? I mean, the government. Let's be honest here. Government listening to the people. One person. But wouldn't it be better if you created a movement where far more people were keen to get involved? Whereas, and I'm going off what our previous guest said, isn't ticking people off by suddenly, occupying a motorway or something like that? Might that get you more detractors than people actually on board? Wouldn't it be better to educate people and talk to them and get them to be the groundswell that changes the government rather than paint on shop windows or soup on paintings?
I mean, pick up a history book, Trisha. Successful movements of social change always cause disruption. I sit here today as living proof that civil resistance works. I'm queer and born female. The only reason I'm able to vote, able to go to university, hopefully someday I'll marry the woman I love. And that's because of people who have taken part in civil resistance before me.
Yeah, but I mean, would you say that in this day and age, there's probably civil resistance that gets more people on side than more people potentially against? I keep coming back to, I would think it'd be fantastic. And I've seen smaller things done where you had something in Hyde Park, or maybe the police knew before, where you actually educated people, because most of the education that people get about things that you're talking about is through the newspapers and through the mainstream media. And God knows they're not on your side.
Well, wouldn't it be great if the government implemented the solutions that we have, like moving towards renewables, which are 9 times cheaper? I mean, your energy bills could be £400 rather than 3,600. Doesn't that make you furious?
Well, a lot of people are going to be furious about the £7 million cost of the Metropolitan Police, where maybe that could go towards people who are suffering in this country, people who can't afford to heat their homes. You know, I mean, I hear what you're. Listen, I'm kind of eating a sandwich because I hear what you're saying, but I also do a whole series on housing and what have you, and there are people hurting out there, and they can't put that message together with your message because it seems too polarized.
Why are we insulating billionaires' pockets rather than British homes? Why are we spending £236 million a week subsidising focil fuels? Put that on the side of a bus rather than throwing Just Stop Oil under the bus.
Yeah, but what I hear and I sympathise, but when you hear like the average person hears 7.5 million cost to the Metropolitan, and you know, and then they see pictures of people putting paint or you know, looking like they're destroying paintings, and we're seeing you there when you were with I think that's you there. But you know, people look at that headline, 7.5 million cost, and that's what they focus on. That at the moment is, I'd put to you, a louder message that's getting people peed off, more so than the message you want to give. I mean, I try to do shows. I'm not a Just Stop Oil person, but I would class myself as being, you know, wanting to bring these issues to the fore. Surely explaining to people and getting them on side that way, which takes a bit of time and effort. Surely that gets more people on side than soup on paintings. And, you know, I can't get to visit my loved one. I can't get to hospital. I can't take my kids, you know, to visit Granny because this is all, you know, we're stuck on the M4.
Well, I mean, if you think money is what people will listen to, and I thank you for giving me the time to say this, the government have made a loophole which in the windfall tax, which means that they've essentially given energy companies £11 billion last year. To put that in context, that's enough to give every NHS worker and every teacher a pay rise to match inflation.
Yeah, but I'm hearing both sides. But Phoebe, you know, and as I said, I'm totally with you on the obscene amounts that energy companies make. You don't have to sell that one to me. And I'm totally, I mean, I'm vexed, to use my mother's word, you know, way of saying it, that's not, that people are still being cut off from power and these flipping forced use of meters and what have you and all of that. Listen, I'm totally with you on the disparity, but it takes time to get to what you're talking about. And obviously, if the government isn't listening yet, isn't it time to change tactics?
Right now, our crops are failing and children are starving and people are freezing. We don't have time for a tactics debate because people are dying. As a young person, my future is at risk. We use these tactics because history has shown that they work. We use these tactics because we don't have any time to keep letting people die as a result of the government's criminal inaction. And actually, we know that these tactics are effective. All major political parties, other than the zombie Tories, have adopted our demand of no new oil and gas.
Yeah, but surely, how do you know that's down to your tactics? You know, how do you know that? How do you know that they weren't doing it? Surely being involved in politics, actually getting involved in politics and doing it from the inside is also a part of, you know, getting where you, and I hear what you mean about, you know, we've handed you SHIT, a bunch of, when it comes to the environment. I'm probably the most environmentally friendly person you'll find on TalkTV. However, I can see from the other point of view, you're not winning over any fans Or is that not part of the deal? Do you not care that you might be alienating people that otherwise might be on side? I mean, well, our police guy reckons that it's people with Tristan and the private school educated and the posh people, that it's only those people that are getting involved, not the ordinary everyday person. They're the ones getting ticked off. So say, I'm giving you the other side of the argument.
This isn't a class war between middle class and working class. This is a war of ordinary people against billionaires. And Trisha, I've looked up your net worth. I know you're a multimillionaire. I'm a student.
Oh God, I wish I.
Whoa. What are you doing to help ordinary people?
Hey, babes. So number one, I'd suggest to you, and I've just said to you, that the press is not your friend, because, and you know that, the mainstream press will say and put online what they want people to think about you, which is why I want you on the show to actually talk to you and hear and listen to you. And I do hear what you say. So let me say, if I was a multi-millionaire, mate, I would not be doing a job like, I wouldn't be doing any job. I'd be off, in swanning around. And it's not for me to, but I mean, I work with mental health and all those sorts of things. I do a lot of things behind the scenes, but I'm trying to change the system from the inside. Listen, I've got a younger, and people hate me for saying this on TalkTV, I've got a younger kid, a non-binary kid. I've had to educate myself about that. They will definitely probably be agreeing with a lot of what you're saying. And I don't have a very different debate with them about what's going on. I'm just saying that the people in power who tend to be older, the very people who've handed you a bunch of when it comes to the environment, surely getting to them or winning them over and getting them on side is better than ticking them off, because they hold all the ultimate purse strings. They make the decisions. And I know what you're saying about, civil, disobedience is what gets people noticed. But maybe it's not working. Maybe you need to change tactics. Maybe it's not working. That's all I'm saying.
Trisha, if you have a younger child, aren't you terrified for their future? Because that's why I do this, because I'm desperate, because I've signed more petitions than I have bones in my body. I've written more letters to MPs than I can count. And it's my future that's at stake. So I will do anything non-violently possible.
Even if it costs money, even if it costs opinions, even if it costs all of those things.
I'm not out here to be like, believe it or not, I do have enough friends. We're here trying to make change. The suffragettes were famously despised. Martin Luther King was voted the most hated man in America when he was alive.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I just wish and it's for you, I just wish that there was more of a discussion for those people who don't get it. I just wish they had somewhere to hear an in-depth discussion, and I do try to touch upon that. I've had guests on this show where we've talked about it, about environmental issues, and sometimes it's opinions are like a juggernaut. You can't just slam on the brakes and have them stop. Sometimes you've got to slow the thing down and turn it around. I mean, it would be good if there was all I'm saying is if there was something like in a big park or meetings where these things were discussed so people can actually understand it. Because all they see now is destruction and I can't get from A to B. And they don't seem, trust me, when people ring in, they don't seem to really understand it. It's not discussed other than maybe in The Guardian or somewhere like that. It's not discussed in a way that people can get behind. And that's what upsets and concerns me.
Well, I'd love to invite you or to any of your listeners to come to one of Just Stop Oil's talks then. We hold them many times a week across the country in different cities. We hold them online. And come and learn what the media don't tell us, because I'm as mad as you are that it's been left to me to make the greatest crisis humanity has ever faced newsworthy. It's so serious what we are facing. We're heading towards mass famine, our crops failing, whole countries lying underwater. This is so serious, and it's not making headline news every day. I don't know why it's been left to me to throw soup on a painting to make this newsworthy.
What about the people, and I've got to put the other view, Phoebe, so what about the people who say that if you're so concerned, leave the comforts, and I don't know, I mean, I'm guessing you're at work, are you? You have a job? Because I'm looking at all of the comments coming in. People are saying, the thought is that, oh, you lot, you're all rich, you don't have to work, you don't do anything, you probably live off our money, and this is what you do. Is that a line pushed by the media that's untrue, or is there some truth in it? I mean, are you working? Do you have a job and you have to take time off to do things like acts of civil disobedience, I should say?
I'm a student, but I cannot believe that we're talking about my personal life when the crisis we are facing is so serious. Did you not hear what I told you, that our crops are failing? We lost a third of our crops. We're predicted to lose half of our potato crops. You might have heard it, but I don't think you're listening, because what I study at uni and my personal life does not matter when there's not going to be food on our shelves, when people are losing their homes in floods and wildfires.
Phoebe, I do hear you, but it's my job to put, to talk about ask questions that other people are asking. Now, I do hear you. I absolutely hear you. I grew up in East Africa. I mean, when you're Googling my net worth, please Google my life. I grew up as a child in East Africa. And I've got to say, my parents were out there, came from the UK. My mum came from the West Indies as a Windrush nurse to help out. My parents went to a newly developed Tanganyika to assist people at ground level to actually, and my dad, trust me, you're a right winger compared to my dad. My dad was slightly to the left of Che. He got off his bum and he went out to a third world, a developing country when I was a kid. And that is where I grew up. And I grew up watching my parents, who were activists, who were on picket lines, but they actually got their hands dirty. All I'm saying, not everybody can do that, but there is a perception, rightly or wrongly, of well-spoken, moneyed kids throwing soup and paintings and what have you. There is that perception. And I'm just trying to ask you questions that ordinary people out there are asking.
Well, I think ordinary people should be asking the government why they're not switching to renewables, which are 9 times cheaper. And if you grew up in East Africa, you must be even more aware than I am of the terrible famine happening there. There's 36 million people facing severe famine due to drought. Their crops are failing. Children are starving.
I hear it. Let's take a break, Phoebe, because I do want to, talk more. And for people who say, from people, environmentalists who say you give us no time, we are actually giving lots of time. I do want to come back to Phoebe because we're actually dropping other stories so we can talk about this. So maybe people can get some more understanding of it. Back in a moment. Welcome back. I'm with Phoebe Plummer from Just Stop Oil. Phoebe, I just want to say a couple of things, and we've still got Phoebe on the line. The couple of things I actually want to say is that this is tough on you because you are one person and you're having to answer for an organisation, which is really, really tough. That's one thing I want to do. I want to do another thing that may or may not get me in trouble. I'm pretty sure that this that discussion we're having, or whatever you call it, is going to make further headlines. And it's funny, we've been talking about kindness, but I'm just going to ask whoever makes the decisions, when you headline this or whatever you do, I ask that you actually reflect what's going on, rather than cherry pick things to prove certain points. Because I would say at the heart of all this, and I'm not being condescending here, if it does sound like that, I'm sorry, Phoebe, but where I'm talking to a young person who is rightly passionate about climate change and oil. What we're debating here, maybe, or we're chatting about, is the way one goes about doing that. I just don't want somebody to be demonized for their passion. I hate that. I hate that. Because as you rightly said before, Phoebe, once upon a time, suffragettes, people of colour, still are, they tend to get demonised because they're passionate about something. I do not want that happen to you. Phoebe, Michael in Leeds says he wants to know, Just Stop Oil, to make a difference, why don't they protest where actual carbon fuels come from, like China?
Well, we spent all of April targeting oil refineries and oil terminals. One of the main comments I had after throwing soup was, why don't you go to the fossil fuel industry? The fact people had to ask those questions is why we also disrupt cultural events. And the UK is complicit. We claim to be global leaders in energy policy whilst funding the death of millions in the global south. We're seeing the realities of climate change here at home. In 2 days of 40 degrees, over 1,700 people died of heat stress. The fire brigade actually had their busiest day since the Blitz, and it's much worse in the global south, and it only gets much worse.
But then, on the other hand, I mean, again, I hear what you say about fossil fuels and energy, but it's a difficult thing to hear if you can't heat your home and you've got children who are ill, you've got babies who are ill. It's a difficult thing to hear, because what can you do about, let's say somebody at home is saying, yep, Phoebe's actually got her finger on the pulse. However, I can't feed my children. I can't heat my house. I've got, one of the things I've done is black mold in the corner. As a result, I've had to take my 2-year-old to A&E with asthma many times. I'm not just making this up. These are people that we talk to, and something that I'm really passionate about, housing. What I'm saying is it's paint on or soup on posh places and what have you, and you talking about reduction of fossil fuels. It scares people because they're thinking, I can't heat my bloody house in the first place, let alone, do you hear what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is that everybody can do and morally has to do something when we're staring at such a huge crisis. I myself, I spent a month in prison. I've got multiple Crown Court cases. I'm not asking a single working mum or somebody using a food bank to do the same things I have. But everybody can do something. And what we need to be doing is asking the government to make changes, because for years I'm vegan. I've made all the individual lifestyle changes I can. I'm vegan. I don't fly. I've stopped buying things firsthand. But all of that doesn't matter.
You don't drive?
No, I can't. You don't drive? A license, but none of that.
You don't know. Do you get a bus?
Yeah, I use public transport, and one of the things that we're asking for is cheap and accessible public transport. I mean, isn't that a no-brainer demand?
I couldn't agree with you more.
And public transport in London is really expensive. But all of these individual changes we make, they mean nothing when we're set against a government that is intent of drilling every last drop of oil out of the North Sea, and the consequences of that are so serious. I mean, we hear the words in the media all the time, the climate crisis. How often do we hear it without it being explained what that will look like? How often do we hear that without being told that before I'm 40, we're expected to see 1 billion climate refugees, that we're expected to see vast swathes of the earth with terrain like the Sahara Desert too hot physically for humans to live? How often do we hear the words climate crisis without imagining what our lives will really look like when there's no more food, when we're fighting over the last loaves of bread in Lidl?
Listen, I hear you. Not everybody does. We've got, hang on, I hear we've got a phone call from Sharon. Sharon in Lincolnshire wants to say something. I don't know what at this stage, Phoebe. Sharon, hello. What did you want to say?
Oh, hello.
Hi, you can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear. Can you hear me?
I can. Yeah, go ahead.
I can't. Honestly, it's painful to listen to that young girl. Really, I can get a bit of it, but the way she goes on about running out of food.
Well, you can talk to Sharon. So, Sharon, you can talk to Phoebe because Phoebe's still here. So,
Hi, Phoebe.
talk directly to Phoebe. I prefer that rather than us talking about her. Let's talk. Talk to each other. This is all about talking and communication. So, go ahead, Sharon. You can talk to Phoebe.
Hi, Phoebe.
Hi, Sharon. Lovely to speak to you.
We talk about worrying about fighting over bread in Lidl, which is. But you condone wasting pounds and pounds and pounds on gallons of paint and destroying windows, stopping ambulances getting to hospital. How can I?
Sorry. So you're frustrated with that? Is that what what are you having difficulty with?
I just don't agree at all, and thousands don't.
Right. So let's come back to. Can we go back to Phoebe to actually answer that, Phoebe? And I suppose somebody's pointed out. Yeah. Let's come back to Phoebe to answer that. And some people are pointing out that if you throw paint on a painting, there's oil and, fossil fuels, if you like, in paint, but you're buying it and things like that. But if Sharon's still...
Yeah.
All right, so Sharon, let's let Phoebe answer. Phoebe?
Thank you, Sharon. I mean, I have to say I'm frustrated that it's been left to me to do this too. If the government did their job, if they protected their people, if they listened to their own scientists that are telling them not to license any new fossil fuels, I wouldn't have to do this. I spent 1 month of my university freshers term in prison. Like, do you really think that was where I thought I'd be spending my university freshers? The government can end this disruption any day that they choose to, when they make that statement that they will halt all new fossil fuel licenses. We're doing this because they aren't listening to the experts. And it's been left to ordinary people like me to sound the alarm bells until they can refuse to listen no more.
Let's ask Sharon if that's okay. Does that answer any of your questions, Sharon? Is she still online?
No, not really, no. Because if she was that concerned, don't get herself a criminal record, wasting her life, vandalising everything and being disruptive. If she feels that strongly about it, get into government.
I wish that there was time for that. But last year, Sir David King, who's the chief scientific advisor to... Sorry, I missed that. I don't want to speak over you.
I just said instead of ruining people's businesses.
What about getting into government? Let's let Phoebe answer that. What about, have you got people standing for government? Is that part of it? Because obviously this is I don't want to sound condescending, but when we, I know you want something done right away, but it's clearly not working. People aren't doing something right away, but I can understand acts of civil disobedience, but why not tell the number one, let's come back to where we started. Why not tell the police what you're going to do first so that they can arrange it, so that they don't end up spending money that they don't need to spend? Why not do that? And why not take another, an added approach, if I can add that, where you do have people standing for local elections? Once upon a time, the Green Party, I would suggest, was in probably a similar, standpoint. People go, environment? Well, who cares about the environment? We've now got the Green Party. So why not do that? Oh, gosh, we've got so many calls. Okay, so why not do that?
So, if you want to talk about policing costs, the police actually spend twice the amount that they've spent policing football matches. And once again, I would say, why are you reporting on football matches every day and not climate catastrophe? Not why did me throwing soup make front page news when millions of people being displaced by floods didn't make front page news? And we have had members of Just Stop Oil run for Parliament. But quite frankly, we don't have time for another general election. It was over a year ago, 18 months ago, that Sir David King, a former chief scientific advisor to multiple UK governments, said that we have 3 to 4 years to determine the future of humanity. That was 18 months ago. And since then, we are hurtling in the wrong direction. In the words of the United Nations, not my words, we're on a highway to climate hell with our foot on the accelerator. I don't have time to stand in Parliament.
Well, I only because I don't want to run out of time before we get another call. Is it John in Bradford? Suddenly everybody wants to join in. John, if you can be pithy and to the point, Phoebe can hear. What did you want to say?
Right, well, some of the things she says might be true, but a lot of it's a load of rubbish, and I'll tell you why. The more people you have on the planet, the more houses you have to build, the more trees you cut down, the more land you build on. That is what the major cause of global warming is actual humanity. You need to reduce the amount of people on the planet, because if you don't, you know what's going to happen. So the majority, the biggest cause of this global warming is man-made.
It's us, yeah. Good point. Thank you. That's another point, Phoebe. I don't know if you want to comment on that. I mean, the world's population is slowing down, probably not fast enough, I'm guessing you'd say.
Yes, well,
I don't think that... Sorry, John, I don't want to speak over you.
Yeah. Sorry. Hang on, John. Let's come back to Phoebe. Let me just come back to Phoebe, because I don't want to run out of time without her getting a chance to say something, because we are almost out of time. We've got 90 seconds, Phoebe, so you'll have to be bang on the point. Okay, yeah.
I agree with you that the climate crisis is man-made, and it is caused by burning fossil fuels. You know, if you don't want to believe what I say, don't listen to me. Please listen to the scientists, because I'm here today as somebody who isn't a climate scientist. I'm a normal 21-year-old student, and I've been forced into this position because people aren't listening to the scientists, because it isn't front page news every day, because we hear about sports news and about Harry and Meghan more than we hear about children.
Listen, hey, I'm with you.
We hear about the realities of burning fossil fuels more than we hear about what's the IPCC report.
All right, Phoebe, I've got to stop. I'm only going to stop you there, because you're talking about time running out. Listen, we agree on a lot, and we might not agree on...
Time is running out. Time is running out to make the changes we need.
Time is running out. Yeah, we've got so many calls. Phoebe, I'm going to have to stop you there. We've got 30 seconds to end the show. Thank you for joining me for much longer than we asked. I know the calls are going to go on forever. And I want to thank all of my team back in London for doing that, and the guests that we kind of displaced. We will have you back next week on our Sunday.